How to melt chocolate chips with coconut oil. When I started experimenting with chocolate years ago, I messed it up so many times. The process of melting chocolates is so simple, but it's also so easy to mess it up. But I'm not the type to give up easily. So I tried and tried until I finally got it right. One of the things I used when melting chocolates was cocoa butter. It gives chocolates that melt in your mouth feeling that we have always loved. Because cocoa butter gets runny and thin when melted, it's perfect when you need chocolate for dipping or coating. But the thing with cocoa butter is that it's expensive and is relatively hard to find. So I looked around and found that coconut oil gives the same effect. And because it's less expensive and is easier to find, it's a perfect substitute for cocoa. I tried and tried until I was able to melt the chocolates without the nasty lumps. By the time I perfected melting chocolates, I used it on basically anything yummy. So, I'm sharing with you how to melt chocolate chips with coconut oil minus the bloopers. Tips in melting chocolate chips. One of the things you need to look out for when melting chocolates is the heat. I don't want you to make the same mistakes I did. So here are some tips for you to take note of. Chocolate chips are the ideal size for melting. But if you're using chocolate bars, make sure you chop them into small pieces of the same size to avoid burning the smaller pieces. Make sure the top pot or bowl of the double boiler is dry. Even a little bit of moisture ruins everything. Melt the chocolates over low, indirect heat. Attempting to speed up the process by turning the heat higher will. It's tricky to identify overheated chocolate that has turned into lumps because they look like unmelted chocolates. Overheated chocolates look chunky, and if you try to melt it some more, it will be thicker and drier. I always prefer to use chocolate chips so it's easier to spot if it's just unmelted chips or if I've overheated them. How to melt chocolate chips with coconut oil. What you need is only 1 teaspoon of coconut oil for each 1 cup of chocolate chips. There are 2 ways you can melt your chocolate chips, the choice is up to you. The double boiler method. You can either use a proper double boiler or an improvised one. The important thing for this method is that you melt your chocolate chips over low, indirect heat. Before you start melting your chocolates, here are 2 critical things you need to note. The top pot should be completely dry. Make sure that the water in the bottom pot does not touch the bottom of the top pot. If you are using an improvised double boiler, make sure that the glass or metal bowl fits the bottom pans. Melting chocolates using this method gives the best result. However, it takes longer than the microwave method. Since I love working in the kitchen, I prefer melting my chocolates in the double boiler. The microwave oven method. This is the fastest way to melt chocolates, but it can also be tricky. You shouldn't judge the melted chocolates by sight if you're melting them in the microwave. Chocolates tend to hold its shape even when melted, so the trick is to stir in between 20 to 30 seconds intervals. All you need to do is place a bowl of chocolate chips in the microwave oven. Set it to 20 seconds at high temperature or 30 seconds at medium temperature. Give the chocolates a quick stir and pop it back for another 20 to 30 seconds, then stir again. Repeat this process, using smaller intervals around 8 to 10 seconds until the chocolate is completely melted. Be careful in handling the bowl as it will get really hot. How to test if the chocolate is properly melted. I usually check the consistency of my melted chocolates to see if I got it right. To do this, I get something to dip in the chocolate, like a fruit or a small pretzel. If the chocolate is too thick for my liking, I add another teaspoon of coconut oil, and stir it until it melts and combines with the chocolate completely. If the chocolate is too thin, I add in a few more chips to thicken the mixture. In most cases you don't need to put it back in the double boiler or microwave, but you can quickly if necessary. Just make sure you don't overheat the chocolate in the process of correcting the consistency. Additional tips. The most ideal substitute for cocoa butter is refined coconut oil because it is tasteless. Unrefined coconut oil has a mild flavor of coconut, so it's great if you don't mind coconut flavor in your chocolates. The same applies for virgin coconut oil. If you melt the chocolates with twice the amount of coconut oil, you get the perfect chocolate shell for ice cream. Whether you pour it over ice cream or you dip the ice cream in it, the chocolate will harden upon contact due to the temperature of the ice cream.